midnight screams.
A man mugged me last month. He didn't take my wallet, but he took something I can never get back. I'm writing this because I have no other way to speak. The police report just says, aggravated assault. They don't understand. They can't. Before all this, my voice was my life. It was more than my life. It was my purpose. Every day, I'd find a corner in this sprawling, indifferent city, and I would preach. I'm a young man, and I know how it looks. Some people would scoff, others would hurry past, but some would listen. I never shouted fire and brimstone. I spoke of hope, of finding light in the cracks of this concrete jungle. My voice was a bell. It was strong, resonant, a gift I believed was given to me to share. I could feel the words vibrate in my chest, a physical force I could project across a busy square, cutting through the traffic and the noise to reach a person who needed to hear it. That feeling, it was like being truly alive. That all ended a month ago. It was a Tuesday. I'd finished late, my throat raw, but my spirit soaring. I'd had a good day. A few people had stopped to talk, to share their burdens. I was walking home, taking a shortcut I'd taken 100 times before. It's a narrow alley, poorly lit, that spits you out a block from my apartment building. It always felt like a little secret passage, a moment of quiet between the roar of the main street and the hum of my residential block. That night, the quiet was different. It was heavy, predatory. He was just a shape in the deepest part of the shadow, halfway down the alley. I only saw him when I was almost on top of him. My first thought was of a homeless man, and my hand instinctively went to my wallet, not out of fear, but to give him what little cash I had. "God bless you, brother," I started to say. The words died in my throat. He wasn't a homeless man. He was wrong. Gaunt is the word, but it doesn't do him justice. It was like his skin was a size too big, for the bones beneath, stretched tight over a frame that seemed impossibly thin. His eyes were just pits of shadow in the dim light. There was a smell, too, like damp, turned earth and old paper. He moved faster than I could react. One moment he was a shape, the next his hand was clamped on my arm. It was shockingly cold, a dead, bloodless cold that seeped right through my jacket. I did what anyone would do. I opened my mouth and I screamed. It was a good, solid scream, born of pure terror, full of all the power I put into my sermons. It should have echoed off the brick walls and brought people running. But it wasn't. The man, this stick figure of a person, didn't flinch. He didn't try to silence me. Instead, he leaned in, his face inches from mine, and as I screamed, he did something I still can't comprehend. He inhaled. It wasn't a normal breath. It was a deep, rattling, impossible inhalation, a vacuum. I felt it. I felt my voice, the very sound and force and vibration of it, being pulled from my lungs, torn from my throat. It was a physical sensation, like a string being yanked from the core of my being. The scream thinned, wavered, and then nothing. It was just gone. My mouth was still open, my lungs were still heaving, but there was no sound. Only a terrifying, profound silence where my voice should have been. The man straightened up, a flicker of something like satisfaction in his shadowy eyes. He didn't take my wallet. He didn't touch me again. He just released my arm, turned, and melted back into the shadows at the end of the alley. I stood there for a long time, trying to call for help, trying to make any sound at all. I could breathe, I could cough, but the part of me that made noise was just gone. It was like trying to flex a phantom limb. The machinery was there, but the signal wasn't connecting. The first few days were a blur of panicked visits to doctors and specialists. I carried a small notepad and a pen, everywhere. I was mugged. I screamed and my voice just stopped. They looked at me with pity. An ENT specialist threaded a camera down my nose and into my throat. He showed me the monitor. "Look," he said, pointing. "Vocal cords are perfect. No swelling, no paralysis, no nodes. Physically, there is absolutely no reason you shouldn't be able to speak." They gave it a name: conversion disorder. Severe psychological trauma manifesting as a physical symptom. My mind, they said, had been so shocked by the attack that it had switched my voice off to protect me. It was a plausible, scientific explanation. It made sense to everyone but me. I went to my mentors, the older preachers who had guided me. I sat in a heavy oak chair in a quiet study, the air thick with the smell of old books, and scribbled my story onto a legal pad. They read it, their faces etched with concern. "The enemy works in many ways, my son," one of them said, his own voice a comforting baritone. "He seeks to silence the messengers of the Lord. This was a traumatic event. The shock has stolen your tongue for a time. You must have faith, pray, rest. Let God heal your mind, and your voice will return." Psychological, everyone agreed. I was the victim of a violent crime, and my mind had broken in a specific, unusual way. I tried to believe them. I really did. I prayed. I rested. I filled notebooks with my silent sermons, with my desperate pleas to God. But I knew what I had felt. It wasn't my mind breaking. It was a theft. I felt the void inside my chest where the resonance used to be. It was a hollow space, an emptiness that ached with silence. Life became a quiet nightmare. The world felt like it was behind a pane of glass. I couldn't work. I couldn't preach. I couldn't even order a coffee without the awkward dance of pointing and writing. I was a ghost in my own life. My very identity ripped away from me. The silence was the loudest thing I had ever experienced. Then, exactly 1 week after the attack, the real horror began. I was in my apartment, trying to read. The window was open, letting in the night air and the distant sounds of the city. At first, it was just a murmur, a sound on the edge of hearing. I almost dismissed it as a car, radio, or a passing argument, but there was something about the cadence, something familiar. I went to the window and leaned out, listening. The sound rose and fell, carried on the wind, and then I heard it clearly, a single phrase echoing from a few streets over, and I tell you, your neighbor's compassion is a weakness you can exploit. I froze. A cold sweat prickled my entire body. It was my voice. There was no mistaking it. It was my pitch, my timbre, my particular way of drawing out certain vowels when I was making a point. It was the voice I had used every day to speak of love and forgiveness, but the words were poison. They were a vile, twisted mockery of everything I had ever preached. I grabbed my keys and ran out of the building, my heart hammering against my ribs. I sprinted down the street, chasing the sound. It seemed to be coming from a small park 2 blocks away. But by the time I got there, breathless and frantic, there was nothing. Just a few people walking their dogs, a couple on a bench. The park was quiet. The voice was gone. I tried to tell myself I was hallucinating. Auditory hallucination, a symptom of the trauma. That's what the doctors would say. My mind was playing tricks on me, creating a phantom of my lost voice. It made sense. But the next night, it happened again. This time it was closer. It sounded like it was coming from the rooftop of the building across the street. I stood at my window, listening, my blood turning to ice. Look upon the desperate, and see not a soul to be saved, but a tool to be used. Their hope is a currency, and you should spend it freely. It was my voice, but it was being used to preach a gospel of fraud, pure, undiluted evil. It spoke of selfishness as a virtue, of cruelty as a strength. It was a sermon from hell, delivered with the same passionate, convincing tone I had once used to bring comfort to the lost. I watched the rooftop for half an hour, but saw no one. The voice just preached its filth into the night air, and then, as if a switch had been flipped, it stopped. Every night after that, it got closer. One night, it was from the alley behind my building. The next, it was from the street corner right below my window. I'd rush down, but there was never anyone there. It was a ghost. I was starting to unravel. I wasn't sleeping. I'd sit in the dark, by the window, waiting, dreading the moment I'd hear myself start to speak. My friends and mentors from the church would check in on me. I'd try to explain, scribbling frantically on my notepad. I can hear my voice. Someone is using it. It's saying terrible things. They'd share those same looks of pity. It's the trauma, they'd say gently. Your mind is trying to process what happened. Perhaps it's a manifestation of your anger, of your fear. They thought I was losing my mind, and to be honest, I was starting to believe them. Was this my new reality? Trapped in silence? Haunted by a twisted version of myself? Last night, I decided I couldn't live like that. Crazy or not, I had to confront it. When the voice started up, closer than ever before, seemingly from the very same alley where I had lost it, I didn't hesitate. I grabbed the heaviest flashlight I owned and went out to face my ghost. The alley looked exactly the same, and the voice, it was here. It was loud, bouncing off the walls, a torrent of beautiful, persuasive, horrific words. For true power lies not in lifting others up, but in the certainty that you can push them down. It was coming from the far end of the alley, and as I crept closer, my flashlight beam cutting a nervous path through the gloom, I saw him. It was the same gaunt man, the same scarecrow figure. He wasn't alone. He had someone cornered, a young woman pressed back against the brick wall. She was staring up at him, her eyes wide, but not with terror. It was more like fascination. She was mesmerized. The voice was pouring out of him, but his lips weren't moving in sync with the words. It was like a badly dubbed movie. The sound, my sound, was emanating from his chest, a perfect, seamless broadcast of my stolen voice, twisted to his purpose. My blood ran cold, but then a different fire ignited in its place. Righteous anger, the kind of fire I use to channel into my sermons. I am a shepherd, and this was a wolf among the flock. He saw me then. The flashlight beam caught his face, and his hollow eyes locked onto mine. The voice cut off abruptly, plunging the alley into a sudden, shocking silence. The woman blinked, as if waking from a dream, and a flicker of real fear finally crossed her face. The gaunt man tilted his head. He didn't seem surprised to see me. A dry, rasping sound, like dead leaves skittering across pavement, escaped his throat. It might have been a chuckle. Then he spoke, and this time, the voice was his own. It was a whisper. You came back. The fire in you is strong. It seasons the sound. He knew. He was talking to me, but he seemed to understand my silent questions. I took a step forward, raising the flashlight like a club. I didn't know what I was going to do. I just knew I couldn't let him hurt that woman. You wonder how, he rasped, his eyes never leaving mine. It's a gift. I take the instruments of conviction, the preacher's sermon, the politician's promise, the lover's whisper. I drink the sound, and I use the leftover faith to draw them in. He gestured with his chin toward the woman, who was now trembling. They hear a voice they want to believe. They come closer. Their walls come down. It makes the rest so much easier. I had no voice to shout a warning. I had no words to condemn him. All I had was my conviction. In a single, desperate motion, I did the only thing I could. I threw myself at him. I'm not a big man, and he was unnaturally strong, but the surprise of the attack was enough. I slammed into him, and we both went down in a tangle of limbs. "Run!" I mouthed at the woman, a silent, desperate scream. For a second she was frozen, and then her survival instinct kicked in. She scrambled away, her footsteps echoing down the alley as she fled into the night. I felt a flash of triumph. It was short-lived. The thief threw me off him with an effortless, terrifying strength. I landed hard against the brick wall, the air knocked out of me. Before I could recover, he was on top of me, one of his cold, skeletal hands wrapped around my throat. He leaned down, his face once again inches from mine. The foul, earthy smell was overwhelming. "A pointless gesture," he hissed, his voice a dry rustle in the dark. "Your flock has scattered, and the shepherd is about to be devoured." His grip tightened, and I felt my consciousness start to slip. He was laughing, that same dead leaf sound, and then he opened his mouth. I will see it in my nightmares for the rest of my life, however long that may be. It wasn't a mouth anymore. It stretched, unhinged, widened, the flesh pulling and distorting in a way that defied all physics, all biology. It kept opening, wider and wider, until his entire head seemed to be nothing but a gaping maw, a perfect circle of absolute, starless black. It was a hole in the world. I could hear a faint, high-pitched ringing coming from it, a sound that seemed to pull at the very edges of my soul. He was lowering this void down over my face, and I knew, with a certainty that went beyond terror, that he was going to consume me, not just my body, but everything I was. And then, the sound of a siren cut through the darkness. It started faint and far, away, but it grew louder, closer, wailing through the night. The thief froze. The black hole of his mouth receded, snapping back into the shape of a thin, bloodless line. A look of pure annoyance crossed his gaunt features. With a final, contemptuous hiss, he released my throat, scrambled to his feet, and was gone. He didn't run. He just faded into the deepest shadows at the end of the alley and vanished. I lay there, gasping, dragging in ragged, silent breaths as the police car screeched to a halt at the mouth of the alley. The woman I'd saved had found them. Of course, they didn't believe the real story. They found me battered and bruised, and the victim hysterical. To them, it was just a mugging gone wrong. An attempted assault. The woman tried to explain about the voice, about how she felt like she was in a trance, but they just nodded and wrote it down as a symptom of shock. When they asked me for my statement, all I could do was pull out my little notepad. They called in a psychologist from the victim's services unit. They were kind, they were professional, and they were completely useless. So here I am. My throat is bruised, but the doctors say I'll be fine, physically. My voice has not returned. I know it won't. It's still out there with him. I'm writing this because I'm a preacher, and a preacher's job is to spread the word. This is my new pulpit. This is my new sermon. That thing is still out there. He's hunting in my city, and he's using my voice to do it. He might be hunting in yours, too. So please, I beg you, listen. If you're walking home at night and you hear a voice from a dark street, a voice that sounds impossibly trustworthy, impossibly convincing, a voice that speaks of hope but makes you feel a creeping dread, run. Don't listen. Don't let the words take root, because it might be a politician's promise or a lover's whisper, or it might be mine. You ever have one of those nights where everything feels off? Like the world's taken a breath, held it, and then let it out slowly, unevenly, just waiting to see what you'll do? Yeah, tonight was that night. I'm a police officer. Been on the force long enough to see things that turn a sane person inside out. Shootings, robberies, the usual ugliness that comes with a badge. But nothing prepared me for what I saw that night. It started around 2:13 a.m. I'll never forget the exact time. Call came in from a guy who lives on the east side of town, claiming his neighbor was losing it. Typical drug-induced freakout, I figured. I didn't expect this. When I got to the building, the hallway smelled like something dead. Worse than anything I'd smelled on the job before. Not your regular garbage or vomit. This was acidic, almost metallic, like iron burning in your lungs. The door to apartment 3B was cracked. I knocked. "Police," I said. No answer. I stepped inside. The lights were out, but the faint glow from the fridge illuminated the chaos. Furniture smashed, walls scratched, no, clawed. And that's when I saw him. He wasn't just high. He was wrong. His skin had this grayish, mottled sheen, like someone had tried to tan a corpse. His eyes, bloodshot, wide, and reflecting the dim light like two pieces of broken glass. And he was moving weird jerky, like every limb was on its own rhythm, and yet he was fast. Faster than any human should be. "Hey!" I shouted, gun raised. "Don't move!" He didn't answer, just lunged. I fired, twice. Both shots hit. He didn't stop. They went straight through his chest. I can't explain it. He screamed something inhuman, like 1,000 voices scraping together. And then he was on me. I don't remember much after that. I woke up in the hospital, bruised, bleeding, barely able to speak. My partner filled me in later. He'd seen it too. Whatever that thing was, it wasn't just a drug addict gone bad. It was something else. Something mutated. They called it feral, a new street drug hitting the city hard. My mind kept going back to that night, back to the creature in 3B. There was something familiar about its rage, its desperation, its animalistic intelligence, but I couldn't place it. Not at first. Over the next few weeks, the city went crazy. Feral users popping up everywhere, attacking anyone, clawing, biting, tearing themselves apart in the streets. The cops were stretched thin. Hospitals filled up, and every time I looked at a news report, I saw that same look in the user's eyes. That hunger. I started digging, not the legal kind, the obsessive kind. I needed to know what this drug was, where it came from, because nothing about it made sense. That's when I found the first clue. An old medical journal from 1989, buried in the archives, written by some Dr. Halvorsen. The guy had a story tragic, twisted, insane. He lost his son to rabies in 1988. He had this theory, this obsession. He believed that an asteroid that had landed in northern Canada that same year carried some kind of biological material that could act as a cure for viral infections, rabies specifically. He called it Project Lissa. According to Halvorsen, the asteroid wasn't just rock. It carried a pathogen, but it was also reactive. He thought he could isolate it, neutralize it, turn it into a cure. He experimented for months, obsessed, alone. The journal was filled with notes, chemical formulas, and sketches of his son's face screaming, dying, pleading. And then I found the part that chilled me to my core. He failed. The cure didn't work. The pathogen mutated, became something else. Something he couldn't contain. And according to his last entry, some of it had already escaped into the population. Feral. It wasn't some street lab cooking up meth or crack. It was government-level science gone wrong. And for 30-something years, it had been out there, hidden, forgotten, waiting for the right person to touch it, inject it, inhale it. I felt sick. Real sick. All those addicts in the streets, they weren't just unlucky junkies. They were experiments gone wrong. Walking, screaming, killing experiments. Then came the nightmares. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that apartment. I saw him, it staring through the darkness. And then I remembered something else. The way it moved. The way it screamed when I shot it. It wasn't just the drug making him violent. It was in his bones, his muscles, every fiber of him screaming to survive, to infect. And that's when the memory hit me. The bite. During the attack, I'd been clawed. Not deep, just enough to break skin. The doctor had warned about rabies. I laughed it off at the time, but now my blood runs cold whenever I think about it. I started seeing patterns in the news, murders, assaults, disappearances, all linked to feral users, and all with the same twisted, jerky movements, the same reflectionless eyes. I tried to warn the department, but no one believed me. They called me paranoid. I knew they were right, in a way. Maybe I was losing it, but deep down, I knew the truth. Feral was alive, in a way that science wasn't supposed to allow. I started carrying sedatives, anti-rabies meds, anything that might help if I encountered another one, and I did. A week later, cornered another feral user in a subway tunnel. This one was worse. Longer limbs, teeth sharper, nails clawed to points. He, or it, screeched like a wild animal. And for a moment, I froze. And then I remembered the doctor's journal. It wasn't about bullets. It was about containment, control, survival. I managed to trap it with a makeshift cage, sedating it just enough to survive transport. We locked it in the evidence room, for now. But every night I hear scratching, whispering. Something about it reaches into my mind, tells me the same thing over and over. They made me this way. You can't stop me. They can't stop me. I dug deeper. Halvorson's final notes mentioned that some of the pathogen had been distributed as medicine for experimental trials. Some of it had ended up in street drugs, disguised as synthetic opioids. Feral wasn't just an accident. It was a relic of a failed cure, unleashed into the world because no one cared anymore. And the worst part? The government still doesn't know how to contain it. I started avoiding people, avoiding streets at night, avoiding my own reflection, because I kept thinking, what if that bite wasn't harmless? What if feral doesn't just infect the body, but the mind? Then came last night, the night that finally proved I was right. I was checking the containment cell, a routine inspection. Nothing fancy, just making sure it hadn't broken free. And it was. There, pressed against the bars, staring at me. Not screaming, not thrashing, just waiting. And then it whispered, not in words, not out loud, in my head. It's in you. I stumbled back, tripping over my own boots. My heart pounded, and then I saw tiny red dots on my skin where the claw had grazed me weeks ago. Nothing serious, just scratches. But now, I don't know. My blood feels different. My thoughts, sharper, angrier. Hunger grows in ways I can't explain. I'm writing this because someone has to know. Someone has to warn the rest of you. Feral isn't just a street drug. It isn't just a freak accident. It's a legacy of grief, obsession, and failed science. And it's still out there. People think they're just taking a hit, just trying to escape for a few hours. But they don't know what they're touching, what they're inviting into their body. I don't know if I'll survive this, or if I'm already becoming it. But I do know one thing. Don't take drugs from the street. Because sometimes what looks like escape is just the beginning of something far worse. Something that was designed to kill, to mutate, to survive, to spread. And it's still out there, waiting. I've had a lot of strange experiences in my time of living in Laramie. One place that always felt kind of spooky to me was certain old buildings on campus. It feels like there's an ominous presence lingering in the dark halls of the basements there. To truly understand this experience, there's some history of University of Wyoming you need to know first. The University of Wyoming was founded in 1886. 4 years before Wyoming was even a state. The local cemetery, Green Hill Cemetery, was built in 1881 and is full of graves that were moved from all different parts of town, including where the university currently resides. Because of this, many people believe that some of the spirits are not at rest after having to be moved, causing many hauntings around town. One haunting on campus is the story of a little girl who haunts Night Hall. People say that when this specific building was being built, a body of a little girl was found where the foundation now is. Although the body was removed, people say they still see a little girl from the windows. They also say that sometimes a little girl can be seen running around the halls, especially in the basement. This is where my strange experience begins. I was wandering the halls of Night Hall with a friend one day, when we made it to the basement. I had heard the story of the little girl, but assumed it was just a rumor since there wasn't much evidence to support it. In the basement, we noticed that all of the lights were out, which was weird because I'd been in the basement before and usually the lights turned on when you walked by. Something felt very off as we went deeper into the hall. It got colder and even quieter, kind of like when snow falls and drowns out sound. My friend, not picking up on any of this, turned the corner and ran as a prank, leaving me in the dark. As I sat in the dark, cold hall, I froze. It felt like someone was right behind me, quietly breathing on my neck. I knew it wasn't my friend. She was down the hall, and the only way back to where I was coming back the way she came. I felt someone gently touch my shoulder, and as I nearly screamed and whipped around, I heard my friend scream and come running back to me from down the hall. We both ran back to the elevator and out of the building. She later confirmed that she heard running behind her and felt like someone was coming straight at her. The thing is, there was nothing past where she was but a wall. She ran the opposite direction towards me right as I was touched on the shoulder. This was definitely the scariest experience I had on campus, but not the only one. University of Wyoming definitely has some hauntings, and I'll try to post some more of my experiences. It is just a kid's book, a title spelled in rainbow blocks, thick pages. Almost a baby book, really. The recommended age is 3 to 5. Zoe and I found it in a dusty box in the storage room at Colvin Preparatory School. Mrs. Lemon, the owner, tries to make us feel better by calling us after-school teachers, but we are babysitters. The most teaching we do is to remind the kids to not pick their noses during snack time. Our real job is to keep the kids safe and at least somewhat entertained while their doctor and lawyer parents make the money to pay the tuition. The work isn't glamorous or interesting, but for a part-time job, the pay is good. Private school and all. There were only a handful of kids today. Mrs. Lemon said it was a popular week for vacations. Seeking to make the most of her money, Mrs. Lemon assigned me and Zoe to clean out the storage closet while she watched the children. We weren't sorry. Cleaning out the closet was easier than corralling the kids. The hardest part was not choking on the dust. Even in the dark closet, we could see the thick gray blankets of dust on the cluttered shelves. "Can you turn on the light, Hooper?" Zoe asked. I flicked the switch. Nothing happened. "Hooper, sorry." I did. I looked up to see an empty socket. Well, damn. I gave Zoe a nervous look. "Don't say that. Mrs. Lemon might hear you. Zoe is the best part of the job. I don't want her to get fired." Shit. That's right. I wouldn't want to lose this chance of a lifetime. I tried to not let her see my dopey grin. We better get started. I ripped open a box. Its cardboard was soft with age. Manila folders filled with what looked like old personnel records. Box of junk here. I looked back to see Zoe playing on her phone. I coughed to encourage her to get to work. "What about you?" She sighed and started to tear open the box closest to her. It was a smaller box, about the shape of a pizza box. It sat crooked, on a bigger box like someone had thrown it in the closet in a hurry. "Well, let's see." She tossed the strip of cardboard into the shadows and pulled out the book. From the fluorescent light in the hallway behind us, I could just see its cover. It showed a papier-mâché sun behind a platinum blonde girl smiling in a pink dress. Or it was supposed to be a girl. Walking over to Zoe to look at the book more closely, I saw that it was actually a grown woman. She looked like a girl because she had sharp circles of blush on her cheeks and stone-stiff pigtails on her shoulders. Her toothy smile looked like it hurt. "What the hell?" I asked. Zoe didn't seem to notice how wrong the book was. She laughed at it like it was a tacky knick-knack. Oh man, how long do you think this has been here? It's probably older than Mrs. Lemon. Put it down? Let's get back to work. Hold on. We have to read it. She sat down on a box and gestured for me to sit in front of her. I sat. I have never been able to tell a girl no. Okay, quick. Zoe started to read like she was back in the classroom trying to calm down a mob of kids. She turned the cover towards me with a dramatic flare. I looked away. The woman's smile was too bright. The National Television Network presents Sunny Sandy. I should have ripped the book from her hands right then. Meet Sunny Sandy. Sunny Sandy lives in Sunnyside Square, where the sun can never stop shining. Sunny Sandy is a good girl. She is always sunny. She is never sad, or angry, or tired, or hungry, or scared. That would be bad. Sunny Sandy is a good girl. She is always sunny. Always. By the time Zoe read always, the hairs of my neck were standing straight. I breathed a sigh of relief when she closed the book. I expected to see her sharing my fear. Or, knowing Zoe, maybe rolling her eyes. I did not expect her smile. How precious, she cooed. Wasn't that precious? Her eyes were harsh rays of sun beating down on me. I stood up to escape the heat. Not particularly. Let's get back to work. I went to take the book from her. She held it tight. Now, don't be silly, Hooper. We're going to read it again. She took my hand and tried to drag me back to the ground in front of her. The iron of her smile matched the iron of her grip. Like hell! I snatched the book from her. When she tried to hold on to it, she fell backwards over the box she had been sitting on. In the cramped closet, there wasn't enough space between her head and the wooden shelf. Her head cracked on one of the crossbeams on her way down. I dropped the book and rushed over to her. She was lying in a slump between the box and the shelf. Her arms and legs were stuck up like she was an insect on its back. Blood rushed from the crack on the back of her head. I couldn't see the wound, but the red pool told me it had to be deep. Through all that, she held her smile. "Come on!" I shouted. I lifted her into my arms. "We have to get you to the hospital." Her voice was perfectly calm. "Thank you, Hooper. That's very kind of you." I took her to Mrs. Lemon, who drove her to the hospital. Between the crack on the wood and when I laid her in the passenger seat of Mrs. Lemon's pickup truck, Zoe never stopped beaming. I watched the kids until their parents came for them. I played pretend with them to stop my mind from imagining what might be happening to Zoe. I didn't want to go home at the end of the day. I still hadn't heard anything, and I wasn't ready to be alone with my thoughts. Procrastinating, I went back to the storage closet. Standing in the hallway light, I saw the woman smiling up at me. I thought back to what Zoe had said. We're going to read it again. This book had broken my friend, but how? It was just a kid's book. I opened it. The first few pages were as boring as any other kid's book from the 90 seconds. Pictures of the woman walking through a cartoon town square, then down a brick main street. Then they turned wrong. On the page with the words, "She is never sad," the woman stood over a striped cat with a collar that said, "Mr. Tiger." The cat was dead. Another picture showed her sitting in a country church pew beside a woman dressed in black. In another, she sat in a closet smaller than the storage closet around me. It looked like she had not bathed or been outside in days. On the last page, the one with the words, "She is always sunny." Always. The woman was lying in a coffin. She still wore pigtails in her hair. and she still smiled. The same smile I had seen on Zoe's bloody face. I feel like Sunny Sandy is inside me now. She's watching me to see if I behave. I'm not sure how long she'll let me write freely, so I wanted to post this here where I know people will see it. I wish I was fighting back tears, or a scream, but if you were looking at me, you'd think I was reading a love letter from Zoe. I look peaceful. I'm scared. Very Scar. Happy Hooper is a good boy. He is always happy. Always. I saw something in my room last night. I know how this subreddit goes. Everything is real and blah blah blah. But I don't know where else to share this. What happened to me is 100% real, though. I swear. I can't stop thinking about it. And now that nightfall is here, I can feel my heart racing knowing that I have to go to sleep soon. If I see whatever it was. In my room again. I don't think I'll ever sleep right again. I'll just jump in and share my experience. Recently I had to move in with my dad. I found out my girlfriend was cheating on me and I just can't forgive that. We had just bought a house together in her name. I know, I'm a fucking idiot. So obviously she's keeping the house. Last night I was getting all my stuff situated in my room, preparing for my first night away from old home. My old life. It was around 9 p.m., and I had to be up early this morning for work. My room is pretty small. My dad's house is small in general, but the spare room is tiny. I have a love seat that folds out into a bed, so I can have more room when I put the pull-out bed away. Anyway, around 9 o'clock, I pull out the bed and turn my T.V, which is maybe at 2 feet from the edge of my bed. I surprisingly fell asleep pretty quickly, right around 2 a.m. I jolt awake from a noise. Hey, I heard a voice whisper loud enough that it woke me up. I shot up in bed confused, my brain still half asleep. My TV was on standby mode, emitting a soft blue light in the room. Other than that, it was blackness. I look around the room, still wondering what woke me, when I looked towards the TV. My heart slammed in my chest harder than it ever has. Right to the left of my TV, I saw an old man's head leaning out from behind it. I stared in shock, trying to make sense of what I was seeing. My tired brain tried to rationalize what I was seeing. I was focusing as hard as I could to see if maybe I had a sweatshirt hanging that just looked like a person. Nope. There's nowhere to even have a sweatshirt hang back there. So I sat up in my bed and looked a little closer, still fully believing I'd see a sweatshirt or something there that was playing a trick on my eyes, making it look like an old man. Obviously, that wasn't the case. I could just see more detail now that I was closer. I could see the receding hairline, the patchy beard, his bulging eyes. He wasn't looking directly at me. He was staring intently at the floor next to my bed. My heart rate quickened as I realized this wasn't a trick of the lighting or something. This was real, and it was 3 feet away from me. I dove for the light switch as fast as I could and flipped on the switch. There was nothing there. I scanned the room for anything out of the ordinary but saw nothing. Everything looked normal. Hello? I foolishly asked at nothing. Obviously, I didn't get an answer, but I wasn't really expecting to. Needless to say, I couldn't fall back asleep after that. I was so on edge that I decided to just stay awake the rest of the night. I'm a 35-year-old man that isn't afraid of the dark. At least I wasn't. But I had every light turned on for the rest of the night. I jumped at every noise I heard, and my head was on a swivel. I was relieved when it was time to start getting around for work. Once I got to work, I went straight to one of my coworkers, named Russell. Dude, do you know what the fuck I saw last night? I half whisper, half yelled. I'm so sorry, dude. It's been driving me fucking crazy. It's the only way to get it to go away. He was almost crying. He told me the day before yesterday he's been seeing something strange in his room at night. Every night. What do you mean you're sorry? I asked, somewhat confused. It's the only way to get it to leave you alone, to pass it on to someone else, he said sheepishly. I was so mad I shoved him and walked away. All day at work I debated telling someone else about it, but I didn't have the heart. I love my coworkers. We're like a family. I couldn't do that to any of them. So to everyone reading this, I'm so sorry. If you see it in your room tonight, turn on your lights and stay awake. That seemed to work for me. Then tell someone else about it and it should leave you alone. Well, at least for my sake, I hope so. Again, I'm very sorry.